Ask yourself to complete the following statements. I want, I need, I am ready for. In communication studies, one of the very basic things we teach our students is the process of communication. In every interaction, either verbal or nonverbal, the sender has a message. They encode the message, send it through a channel to the receiver, who then decodes the message and then provides their feedback by encoding their own message, sending it through a channel, and then the new receiver decodes the message and then encodes their own message as feedback, and so on and so on. While all of this is going on, there's noise all around us. TV's on in the background, other conversations going on in the room, dogs barking, music playing, everything and anything to do with our phones, even things going on in our own head, thoughts from earlier in the day, worries about the future, distractions. Think about when you're at a party. You're trying to have a conversation with someone. All of the noise around you makes it very difficult to hear what the other person is saying. What if they're trying to tell you something important, but you miss it because of the noise of the music, the conversation next to you, glancing at your phone because a message popped up, or any multitude of factors around you? Maybe you might say, let's step outside where it's quiet so I can hear you. Why? Because you need to quiet the noise. Ask yourself to complete the following statements. I want, I need, I am ready for. When we communicate intrapersonally or with ourselves, we really follow the same process. Only this time, we are both the sender and the receiver of the messages. There's just as much noise in those interactions. And now we're also faced with not only the external noise, but also the accumulation of years of cultural, societal, and interpersonal noise invading our thoughts. And all of the narratives we've created, and our to-do lists, and our anxieties, and the endless amounts of distractions inside of our head. So much noise. The chatterati, as the yogis call it, the chit-chat of the mind. When you ask, what do I want? Is it what you want? Or is it what you think you want because it's what your family or society or your culture wants? What do I need? Is it what you need? Or is it what you've been taught to need? What am I ready for? Is it what you're ready for? Or is it what you've convinced yourself you're ready for because of the narratives in your head? Do you even have answers to these questions, or are there so many distractions that you can't even focus on the questions, let alone the answers? So what if, just like at your friend at the party, what if the answers you are trying to tell yourself, a really important message, is lost through all of the noise? If your intuition is telling you the answer, but you can't hear it through the noise, through the chatterati. Maybe you just need to do the same thing and step outside. Although we can't do it physically, like at the party, we can accomplish the same thing through meditation, quieting the noise of the mind. When you remove all of those distractions and calm the analytical, conscious mind, it allows the subconscious mind to send us those messages without battling through the noise. We can tune into our intuition, which is quite powerful in guiding us through our lives. Intuition can create that sense of just knowing something, heightening our sense of what we should do or what is best for us, answering the questions and decoding the message that our conscious thinking mind can't hear through the noise. Ask yourself to complete the following statements. I want, I need, I am ready for. And consider, would your conscious and subconscious minds answer these questions the same? What if you quieted all of the noise, the chitterati, and listened to what your intuition is trying to tell you? Hey guys, it's Jen. We have a special fun episode today. It's our very first guest. Look at us. We're growing. I'm excited to welcome our guest, my friend, Samantha Fey. Samantha is the author of The Awake Dreamer, Lucid Dreaming, Astral Travel, and Mastering the Dreamscape, which explores the concept of soul travel through dreaming. She co-hosts two popular podcasts, Psychic Teachers and Enlightened Empaths, which teach listeners how to embrace and celebrate their spiritual journey. She has advanced degrees in education and is a Reiki master who writes and teaches all over the world about dreaming, spirituality, crystals, and intuition. I mean, y'all, everything she studies is so right up my alley. She is an expert in some things that we've touched on very briefly, like dreams and chakras, as well as topics that have such a natural tie into parenting, like empathy, intuition. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on today. As moms, I know we would all like our teens to be empathic towards others and intuitive in their lives. As the host of the podcast entitled Empaths, all right, can you just kind of start off? I know the terms empaths and intuition and being intuitive, those are things that are very common in your line of work. Can you give us an explanation of what exactly you see those as?
Yeah, of course. So to me, an empath is someone who just feels everything deeply. Empaths tend to be very sensitive and kind and caring. Their natural instinct is to be a giver. And they're the ones who, if you have lunch with your friends and maybe one of the friends is kind of quiet and no one else really notices, the empath will notice. The empath is the observer, and he or she will say, "Hey, is everything okay?" So an empath picks up on people's emotions, what's behind the mask so many of us wear throughout the day. Whereas someone who's intuitive, I am very passionate about telling everyone that we're all intuitive. I really think it's built into us as part of our fight, flight, or freeze that we were, genetically coded with and to protect ourselves. Someone who is intuitive is going to sense things that they really don't know why this is coming to them. They might meet someone and shake their hand and get a feeling, even though the person is smiling, they might get a little warning feeling like, heads up. And so one thing I'm really interested in is researching that, looking at the scientific research that's been done recently, proving that we really are all intuitive and helping people learn to recognize and trust that, because it really is a protective thing for us.
So on a physical and spiritual kind of realm, are these things that you believe that we are all born with or that we develop as more of a skill?
Both. I think that we are all born with them. I think some people come into the world a little bit more intuitive than others or a little bit more empathic than others. And unless you're, a sociopath or a psychopath, everyone has empathy. But it is something that can be modeled and taught, especially for parents. I think it's important for moms and dads and caregivers to recognize that the more empathic they are to themselves, their children, and the world around them, children are always watching and they're going to pick that up, and it's going to help them be more connected little people in the world.
So that's an interesting place to start with this empathy idea. Is I know that of my children, they're all very empathetic. I have at least one that, especially, it's funny, I've always kind of thought of it, but reading through your material and reading it really, I have at least one who would be categorized as being an empath. What do you encourage parents to do? Because is there such a thing as being too empathetic? Because I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I know that especially, I see with my children, it manifests itself in guilt, in feeling like they have so much and others don't. And this sense of, why do you give me so many things? What have I done? Why do I have this when I see other people, my peers, who don't have this? And almost a sense of feeling bad, which manifests itself in good things as far as generosity and service and things like that.
But I also know those feelings of guilt can be a little bit too much. How do you see something like that?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And since our kids went to school together, I can attest that you have great kids and they are all empathic and good, kind little souls. I do think that sometimes kids can be too empathic, I guess is a good way of saying it, because they are extra sensitive and they are always perceiving things around them and they're always thinking more deeply than their peers. And that can be really hard on a child. And so I think it's important for parents to learn to really vocalize that with their child and help them recognize that, everyone has a story and everyone has ups and downs and highs and lows. And I always tell my kids, the more you give, the more you can receive. And the more you receive, the more you can give. And in a story I will often demonstrate in my classes is I'll take a couple of dollar bills and some 20s and some 10s, and I'll have everyone stand in a circle. And I'll say, okay, pass the money around. And so we just pass it around and they're thinking, why are we doing this? And when it gets to me, I collect all the money and I don't keep passing it on. And I say to the class, see what happens when we don't share and we don't receive. All the good positive flow stops. So I think it's really important to give kids examples, of how they can really recognize that, yes, you do deserve this. And I love to always tell my kids stories from my own work to emphasize this. One of our listeners sent in the most amazing story. Her son had a physical disability and he needed an extra special wheelchair and they really could not afford it. And so she went to her pastor and the pastor put a notice up in the church and in the bulletin that week and said, hey, we're doing a little fundraiser. If you could contribute $5, $10 so we can help this family buy this very expensive wheelchair. And she was very grateful for that. And one day, a couple of days after church, a man rang her doorbell. And there he was in this huge van with this beautiful, expensive wheelchair. And he said, my wife just passed and we don't need this wheelchair anymore. And I heard the pastor talking and I'd like to give it to you. And she broke into tears and she said, I can't take that. Like, you can sell it and make money and contribute to my GoFundMe, but I can't take that. And he said, would you deny me the gift of giving? That just really, really stayed with me.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Gives me chills to hear something like that. Now I know that other parents kind of find themselves on the opposite side of that coin with, especially once they get to this kind of teenager age, that they feel like they need their children to develop empathy and that it's more of a struggle on the other side of them not being empathic enough with people. How do you suggest they approach it?
I think one of the things that I've done with my kids is I always try to use action and examples more than words, right? So I use the holidays a lot to teach empathy. So for example, at Easter time, we always pick a project where we do something. We'll make blessing bags for homeless people, or one year we made those little tie blankets and took them to the animal shelter. At Christmas time, I have this big elaborate box and I call it, Jesus's birthday present. And the whole month of December, I make them, now they hate this, they resent it every year, but I make them do something nice once a week for someone, a random stranger, a friend, a teacher, what have you, and write it down and put it in Jesus's birthday box. And like I said, through middle school and high school, they just rolled their eyes, but I kept all of them. Right. And just this year, I pulled out the box and they were like, oh, Mom. But we went and looked at all the notes and they were like, oh, I forgot I did that. Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, remember when? And so it pays off in the end, I think. And so I think teaching them traditions of giving back and being empathic and feeling for others is a really good way to start. But I also think, again, talking to them, one thing I've learned with my teens, they don't really want my advice, right? They don't want me to fix anything. They want me to listen. And once I listen to them and hear them out, then I can kind of give them the other side. And I think that teaches them empathy when you give them the grace of space to kind of, vomit their emotional stress onto you. Right. But then when that's done, they're able to listen to you. And I always like to present both sides of a situation. If they're having a fight with a friend, I listen and then I say, well, let's think about it from her perspective. and let me know what you would think if you were in her shoes. And I do think that helps kids a lot.
Oh, that's a great idea, because realistically, so many of us, I think as parents, have the tendency to just automatically go into that kind of protective mama bear mode where we just look at it, and it's harder to kind of play the devil's advocate kind of position and show them that other side. And so maybe that is something that some of us are not doing that actually, in fact, would help with that empathy. That's interesting. Okay, so can we switch over to intuition? Let's talk about that, because I know that you're really passionate about talking about intuition. So if we, the conversations that we've been having here have really centered on looking at family communication and how family communication needs to evolve, because the way that we parent our children is not necessarily the same way that we need to parent our teens. And so our parenting styles need to change as well. One of those changes is to give them more independence. And I think that that's where a lot of us struggle, especially around those tween to early teen years, and some even farther along than that how do you give that independence, and where do you give that independence? What kind of role do you see intuition playing in this? Because from my uninformed perspective, I feel like there's an overlap, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
No, there definitely is an overlap. And I think it's really important to teach your kids that their senses, their gut hunches, their intuitive notions about people, places, and situations are always going to lead them down the right path. And so I constantly tell my kids that, they have this weird woo-woo mom, right? So they're not always walking around going, this is my mom who has a podcast called Psychic Teachers and Enlightened Empaths. But I am always teaching them to do that. And there's some really fun ways you can do that. The numbers game, I'm thinking of a number from 1 to 10, and ask your kids to guess which one. I have one child, it's literally her party trick, because she's never wrong. She always guesses the right number. Or you can play the hot cold game, where you hide an object in a room and you have the kids look for it. You're getting hotter, you're getting colder, and then that's using your intuition. And so I've always played games like that with my kids. So when they're invited to a situation, like let's say they're invited to a party and they tell me, hey, Mom, I got invited to this party and, parents aren't going to be there. Well, my first instinct is to say, well, hell no, you're not going.
Right.
But I've learned, I remember very, very vividly what it was like to be a teenager myself. And I think that's really helpful for parents too, if we can remember back to that. And so I know if I have that knee-jerk response of, nope, you can't go, they're gonna go. And so instead, I will say to them, okay, well, what if it all works out really bad and there's some scary situations? What are you going to do? And instead of saying no, I kind of talk them through it. I tell them to get there, get a sense for it. And I always let them know, you can call me no matter what happens. I'll come get you, no questions asked. And I think it's really important to back that up so that if you do get that phone call at 12:30,
right,
that you do go and pick them up and no questions asked. But really and truly, if you teach your kids throughout the day to trust their instincts and intuition, and then remind them, because this is something we all do, whether we're kids, teens, or adults, our intuition never lies. And yet, when it's right, we tend to forget it. And we go back to doubt and worry and fear. So when your children come home and they say something like, gosh, this new Spanish teacher, there's something off about her. I don't know what it is, but we're not connecting.
Right.
And then halfway through the semester, something weird happens with that Spanish teacher and she quits and there's a sub. It's really important to remind your child, hey, you picked up on that. You were really good at spotting that. So I think it's important for us as parents to be vigilant and communicating with them and really honoring that intuition. As a kid, I was always seeing stuff and sensing things and getting insights. I remember coming home and telling my mom I had a dream that my 5th grade teacher was going to be fired. And it made me very, very nervous. And she said, oh, you have such a vivid imagination, Samantha. Well, my teacher was caught having an affair with the janitor in the school.
Oh my goodness.
And I know, and I came home and I told my mom and she was like, oh, that imagination of yours, like they never validated it. And it was very hard for me as I got older to trust that still small voice within.
Wow. And so how as parents can we recognize those things? I mean, because obviously you are coming at it from a perspective that these things light up for you and you see them in your children. But so many of us, how do we not default to that? Oh, you have a vivid imagination. Because I know I can possibly remember specific times of dismissing things my children have said because I guess I'm not thinking along those lines.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't think kids lie. I really don't. I think kids tell the truth, and they might not have the right words for it when they're young. But if you pay attention, most kids will say, I remember my youngest when she was 3 years old saying, I picked you to be my mommy. And she told me this whole story how she was in a tower and there were these clouds and God came and waved the clouds away and showed her three moms and she picked me. So I think kids are always telling stories like that. They're always trying to share things, or they might say, I was walking with my niece when she was about 4 or 5. She's now 23, but I remember this so clearly.
Right.
And a fire truck went by and she said, Aunt Samantha, I used to be a firefighter a long time ago in a life before this one.
Oh, wow.
And I just said, well, Grace, that's amazing. I bet you were a great firefighter. I didn't make a big deal out of it,
Right.
but I just honored it and validated it. So I think kids are always saying these things, and it's really our job as stewards of their childhood and their teen years to observe that and honor it and validate it. I really think it's a pendulum here, right? Like I really don't think parents should say, oh, you have such a vivid imagination. But on the other side of that pendulum, I don't think parents should say, oh my gosh, you're really intuitive. What do you feel about my boss? Like I don't think we should promote it either, because at the end of the day, they need to be young people having fun.
It's interesting that you say that, because I want to ask you an overlap kind of question, I guess, between the intuition and being an empath, because of something you just said. I said how at least one of my children I would describe as an empath. The same one, my youngest, she was a preemie and she was born at only 27 weeks. And when she was about 2 years old, in the backseat of the car, out of nowhere, she said, I didn't like it in your tummy. She said it was dark and it was scary. And I knew that everybody wanted to see me. And I mean, I about drove into a tree at that point, oh, isn't that nice? Thinking, but that's sure, you want to talk about somebody not making something up. I mean, she was 2 at that point. Where did that even? So that's really interesting that you say something like that.
Yeah. How could she have the words for that or the knowledge? How at 2 would she even know it was dark inside your tummy? They don't know that.
Right.
And I just don't think kids lie or make things up. One of my favorite stories about my oldest, we got her a fish when she was 4 years old, and we're driving home from the pet store. And I said, well, honey, what do you want to name this fish? And she said, Odin. And I said, Odin? Like, that's and I'm going through like every Disney movie and every book we've read. Yeah. I'm like, where'd you come up with that name? And she said, that's the name of my guardian angel. And I said, oh, okay, that's great, honey. And, again, I dropped it, didn't make a big deal out of it. Well, she's flash forward to second grade. She has to do a report on her guardian angel. And we're driving to school. And she said, can I read it to you, mommy? And I said, yeah. And she said, my guardian angel's name is Brittany. And she has long hair and big blue eyes. And she's very pretty and all this stuff. And I said, oh, honey, that's great. But you told me years ago your guardian angel's name was Odin. And she goes, Odin? I think that's a boy's name, and I would never have a boy as an angel. And I laughed and said, okay. So we're at the stoplight, and there's this white Porsche next to us revving its engine really loud. And I'm looking at it kind of annoyed, and the light turns green and it takes off, and the license plate said Odin #1.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, look at that, Olivia. And she goes, darn it, my angel is a boy.
Oh, that's so funny. That's funny. I have a similar story with our cat, that our cat had died. And I said I was never getting another cat again. I said it was the last of our cats. I said dogs. I felt like there was more of a return on investment with dogs. Like I felt like I got more out of them. And then one day I was sitting by myself and I thought how much I missed our cat, that was when she would come and sit by me. And so I pulled up the cat rescue, the PetSmart rescue thing. And there was this cat and it was Greta and it was so cute and so sweet. And I'm like, we're not getting another cat. Sure enough, I'm in the parking lot the next day and there was a car with the license plate that said Greta on it right in front of PetSmart. I was at Dick's, but it was next door. I was right in front of PetSmart. And like, okay, there you go. That's where we're supposed to, she's calling out for us.
See, you can't make that stuff up. And when things like that happen, I think it's so important to point it out to the kids so that they recognize that there's something greater than us that's helping us and wanting to co-create with us. I believe it helps children and teens to feel comforted and supported and seen by this invisible world that is around us and is hoping to support us and help us.
Right. That's now, okay. So since we're on to this intuition, we had a very brief conversation about chakras the other day. And that's obviously you are a much greater expert in that area as a Reiki master. How can you describe or talk about the role of, because obviously intuition being tied to our third eye chakra, what can you talk to us about chakras?
I think the chakras to me are everything. We have many, many chakras, but there are 7 main ones. They run up and down your spine. So the base of your spine is the root chakra, all the way up to the top, which is your crown chakra. And if you know the rainbow, you know your chakras, Roy G. Biv, right? So it's red, orange, yellow, etc. And each chakra monitors a certain aspect of your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So if you're having a lot of lower back pain, that's a root chakra issue, which could mean that you are worried about money, or you're worried about your home, or there's some childhood trauma that still needs to be healed. If you're having some, shoulder pain, that's connected to your higher heart chakra, which can mean you don't feel supported in life. So I really love studying the chakras because it really is all connected. Now, a lot of people do connect the third eye chakra to intuition, which is right. It's connected to clairvoyance, but really every chakra helps us link into our intuition. And the third eye chakra is also connected to feelings of being in control. So if you have a type A personality and you feel like you need to control everything, you're going to have a lot of headaches. So
interesting.
To me, our body is constantly trying to talk to us, and it's all connected to this chakra system. And if we learn to work with it and really listen to what our body is trying to tell us, we can get a lot of help.
That's interesting. To give you a little bit of background, the reason that we even started talking about chakras was, I've practiced yoga for about 25, 30 years now. I used to teach yoga back when I was in graduate school. So it's not like this is a new area of my life in any capacity. Running parallel to this, for decades, I've had these dreams that I'm choking. Every night or couple nights, I dream I'm choking on an object. Well, I looked in dream books for years, and everything was being choked type of thing, which it wasn't. And, honestly, it just became it's honestly been 25 years that this has been going on. So it's become such a part of life that it's in the background. It doesn't even wake anybody anymore, at this point. It's because we're just so used to it. But to the point that about 45 minutes into being asleep, I find myself choking on something and I'm, frantically trying to pull it out of my throat. And when my husband would try to talk to me or engage me in some way, I would, of course, be mean because, stop talking to me. I'm trying to fight for my life here, kind of thing. And you're making fun of me, eventually, and they all end up the same with me waking up, realizing this is not real. This is, processing it and going back to sleep. Now, it wasn't until just a few weeks back when somehow I stumbled upon that dreams of choking on an object are related to your throat chakra. And it was like reading about that. It's like, how did I not connect these dots earlier? How have I for 25 years not connected these dots? And so, now I've got a blue lapis necklace and a ring, and I'm like all wearing blue all the time. I've never worn blue probably my whole life, but I am like Miss Blue right now. So, that's just one thing, how can we start to recognize these things in ourselves and know that a lower back problem is not from, carrying too much weight or physically carrying too much weight? How can we recognize that that's, root chakra related, or that dreaming about choking on some object is throat chakra, as opposed to how do you start to distinguish these things?
Right. Well, I think it's important to remember, especially with dreams, that our subconscious is very literal and our subconscious never uses words. So, for example, if I said to you, don't think of pink elephants, your subconscious doesn't hear those words, don't, or think, or pink. All you're seeing is pink elephants.
Right.
So our subconscious is very visual and it's very literal and simplistic. So when you have an issue like that, you want to start very literal. Okay, choking, throat, what could that mean? What am I not swallowing? What am I not speaking? What am I swallowing in life that I don't want to swallow anymore? What am I putting up with? What am I not putting up with? So if you start just asking yourself those questions, you're going to get to those specific answers. I love looking up, dream symbols. What does this mean? But I think at the end of the day, we always have to go within and trust ourselves. Like, for example, if you have snake dreams, that can be connected to root chakra because a lot of that energy is Kundalini, which is spiraled at our base chakra. And a lot of people, if you look it up, it'll say fear dreams. Well, that's only if you're afraid of snakes. I have no fear of snakes. So if I dream of a snake, it's not going to be fearful for me. It's going to be about transformation and shedding things. So I think it's fine to do all the research. But at the end of the day, you have to think, okay, what is my subconscious trying to tell me? Where is this in my body? How does this make me feel? How can I look at this simplistically? And then how can I dive deeper? And eventually, it might take 25 years, but eventually you will get to what your body is trying to. Our body, our subconscious, they are always trying to talk to us.
So how do you go about healing your chakras?
It's so much easier than people think. It really is. And one of my pet peeves is this word imagination. As you can tell, I mentioned it earlier. I think the imagination is very, very powerful. And I believe something very powerful happens when we use our imagination. I don't believe it is this made up world when we daydream or imagine something. So if you just close your eyes and imagine these 7 centers that represent the colors of the rainbow lining up your spine to the top of your head, if you just imagine them spinning at the same rate and you imagine them in the same circular size and shape, you're going to balance your chakras. And a lot of people, when I teach classes on chakras, they look at me and they say, that's way too easy. But it is, because that's how it works. You don't have to make it complicated. Now, of course, you can. I love to meditate with the chakra stones on my chakras. I love to give myself Reiki when I'm balancing my chakras, but you don't need to make it that complicated. If you simply tune in, like, for example, if you're having those choking dreams, I think all the things you're doing, wearing lapis and blue and all of that is fantastic. I'm sure you're doing fish pose and up dog.
I am. I have my whole yoga routine for it. Now I'm opening all of them. I'm trying to get them all because I'm like, I don't know, is something else causing it? Who knows? I got the most flowy open chakras lately.
I think that's fantastic. But you can also just go to your throat chakra
lion's breath. Don't forget, I'm doing my lion's breath every morning. I'm hoping none of my family accidentally walks in on me doing that. I've had to explain to them, they love walking in on me meditating to begin with, especially when I happen to be wearing an LED light mask as well, at the same time. So yeah, they understand what it's like to have a woo-woo mom as well.
That's fantastic. I love it. Yeah, mine are used to seeing me in a circle of crystals too. But one thing you can do is just go to your throat chakra and ask yourself, what does my throat chakra look like? And accept the first image that pops into your imagination. Or if I had to give a symbol for my throat chakra, what would it be? And again, accept the first thing that pops into your head. I also love to tell people to visualize their chakras like doors, like 2 double doors that are closed. So 2 red doors at the base of your spine, 2 orange doors at your sacral chakra, and so on. And then just visualize them opening. And visualize that light, clear and bright and beautiful, just shining out. That's a great way to open your chakras.
Let's go back to dreams. A lot of our kids, I mentioned that my daughter dreams a lot. The one who, did not like being in my belly and so decided to come out whenever she felt like it. She dreams a lot. And I know a lot of us have children who are similar that, wake up and tell you, what they dreamt, or I had the craziest dream last night, or or just seemed very off or upset by dreams. I know she's not the only one, that's for sure. So what do we make of those? How do we help them unpack, especially when not only did they not necessarily remember, because I know when my children tell me dreams, just like I'm assuming yours and others, they're oftentimes like when I try to explain a dream that it's really disjointed and it makes sense, but you can't put it into words. How do we handle this with them? How do we help them?
I think it's important to focus on the emotion that they were feeling in the dream. So I always start with that. First, it's important to model that for your kids. So at the breakfast table, I am constantly bothering and boring my children with my dreams. But then it gives them that permission when they do have an important or scary or exciting dream, they know they can share it with me because they've spent years listening to mine. Right. And so I'll listen to them try to process the dream, but then I go back to the emotions. It's also important to look at the colors in the dream, the other people in your dream. Carl Jung always taught us that everyone that appears in our dream is an aspect of us. So if they have a dream about a teacher yelling at them, it's not really that teacher. It's an aspect of them that's criticizing their inner self. And so I think
somebody else is just there as kind of the personification.
Yes, exactly. And so I think when you show kids that, like, okay, this old guy who died a long time ago, but was really important. He said, everyone in your dream represents an aspect of you. So who could this teacher, what part of you is yelling at yourself in your life? And it's really a rich area to have your kids not only learn to process their own emotions and feelings, but share things with you that they might not have otherwise.
Right.
So I really do invite that we foster this attitude of sharing our dreams. Even if some of them are weird and disjointed, they're all trying to teach us something. And it can really help us figure out what's going on inside our child's mind.
So instead of asking them for the details, like is our instinct to do and tell me what happened, where it just goes in this storyline you can't even follow because they're having a hard time with it. Instead, talk about the emotions that you felt, how this dream made you feel, and who was in it, and then analyze from there of what it represents and such for them.
Yeah, exactly. And ask them, why do you think rabbits appeared in that dream? Like, what do rabbits mean to you? Help them break it down into the parts of the dream.
That's great. That's very interesting. So, all right. So talk to us more about dreams, your book. Okay. So your book, The Awake Dreamer, it has a much longer title than that. The Awake Dreamer, Lucid Dreaming, Astral Travel, and Mastering the Dreamscape. Okay, you may need to explain the title to start with, probably, but tell us about dreams. What exactly happens to us when we dream? Is dreaming a way that we're processing and releasing our day, or is it something else that's going on with us?
I think it's both. I think that sometimes, most of the times, our dreams are just a way for our body to release stress and emotions and built up, pent up energy that we've kept throughout our day. We actually, scientifically, we do something extra with cortisol when we're sleeping. So it is a great stress relief for our brain. The awake dreamer is not so much about those typical dreams, though. I believe in my woo-woo world that we have a body, a mind, and our soul, and our body needs to sleep and our mind needs to sleep. But our soul is always connected to the divine, to the other side, and it never needs to sleep. And so I think sometimes our soul actually travels and goes to these amazing places. And I think that these examples we have throughout history of precognitive dreams, of meeting with loved ones on the other side. I mean, Mark Twain dreamt of his brother's death 2 weeks before it happened and wrote about it and spoke about it very often. Carl Jung dreamt of his dad after he died and said it made him rethink his belief in the afterlife. St. Augustine has a wonderful letter he published from 417 AD, where his friend, a physician, was telling him that he had a dream that a man came to him and said, "Are you seeing me?" And the man said, "Yeah, I'm seeing you." St. Augustine's friend said, "Yes, I'm seeing you." And he said, "Well, look over there." And he pointed to the bed, and there he was laying in the bed with his eyes closed. And he said, "With what eyes are you seeing me?" And the physician said, my spiritual eyes? And the man said, yes, that's right. And he said, never doubt life after death, because this is how you continue on. And that's from the 5th century. So I just had so much fun going through the research of famous, well-regarded historic figures who documented these amazing experiences.
So what are some of you mentioned in your book about some of these inventions and discoveries and stuff. So can you give us some examples of those that have come from dreams?
Yeah, the most famous probably is Frankenstein. Mary Shelley dreamt that entire book. She was on vacation with her husband and Lord Byron, and they challenged each other to come up with a horror story. And she fell asleep that night and dreamt the entire story of Frankenstein. She was 19 years old. Can you imagine?
Wow, I can't. Oh, that's crazy.
She said he came to her fully formed in a dream. Paul McCartney dreamt the whole melody to Yesterday, to the point where he thought he stole it. And so he went to all his friends. At the time, he called it Green Eggs and Ham. Yesterday, I had dreamt of green eggs and ham before he finally wrote the lyrics. But no, it just came to him in a dream. Stephen King dreamt the whole plot to Misery on a flight from Maine to London. So we have the periodic table of contents from chemistry. Remember that, having to memorize that came in a dream. I have an entire chapter on inventions that came from dreams and music. Keith Richards wrote Can't Get No Satisfaction from a Dream. He actually fell asleep recording himself just playing on the guitar. And when he woke up, he was in some hotel in Florida on tour. And when he woke up, the tape had gone all the way to the end. And he was like, well, that's weird. And so he played the whole thing. And somehow in his sleep while dreaming, he had recorded what we now know as that famous song, and he has no memory of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can encourage dreaming?
Yes. Yeah. Thomas Edison and Salvador Dali had this really fascinating practice. Thomas Edison would take a nap every day, and he'd fall asleep with 2 balls in his hand, 2 metal balls in his hands, and he'd position cake pans at his feet. So when he hit the REM stage of sleeping, which is when we have our dreams and our body completely self-paralyzes and relaxes, the balls would drop into the pan and he'd wake up. Because he knew if you woke up in the middle of that REM stage, you'd recall your dreams. And he said his best inventions came from those little dream naps. And so one thing you can do, although I don't recommend it, but you can drink a lot of water before you go to bed, because that will make you get up to have to use the bathroom. And normally you will wake up during that dream cycle and you'll recall your dreams. However, we do the majority of our dreaming in the last third of our sleep cycle. So an easy thing that I recommend is that you set your alarm an hour earlier than you have to wake up. So if you get up every day at 6 a.m., set your alarm for 6 a.m., but set another one for 5 a.m. And when that alarm goes off, wake up, turn it off. Don't hit the snooze. Fall back asleep. When your alarm goes off at 6 a.m., you will remember at least one dream.
Interesting. So because it would wake you up in your REM cycle.
Yes. Yeah. And that's an easy one. Also, when you wake up, most of us get up and we're just like, let's go. Let's hit that to-do list. Let's jump in the shower. Let's get to the gym. Don't do that. If you can, just wake up and lay completely still and silent and just stare at the ceiling. Don't try to remember your dreams, because it's kind of like trying to catch a spider web, it's going to float away. But just let any memories fall into your consciousness. That's going to help dream recall a lot. And like I said before, at the breakfast table, talk about your dreams.
Yeah.
The more you talk about them, the more you're going to have.
Now, you mentioned in your book a shared dream experience. What's a shared dream experience?
A shared dream experience is when you have a dream and someone you're very close and connected to has the same dream. And this has happened to me many times, and it always freaks me out.
I bet.
I had a dream where I was walking through this, I call it like a subway tunnel. And I was walking with someone, and I saw my coworker coming towards me, and she was walking with someone. And it wasn't a very exciting dream, but it was so vivid. And I waved and said hi to her, and she waved and said hi to me. And I saw her at work the next day. I'm at the copier, and I was like, hey, I had a really random dream about you. And I started telling it to her, and she's finishing my sentences. She had the same exact dream.
Wow.
Yeah. So I find that really interesting. Now, most shared dream experiences are more impactful than the one I just
Just passing by in the dream world.
Yeah. But I did read this fascinating book by Oliver Fox. It was written in the 1920s, and he was really interested in dreams and what they can teach us about our subconscious and the power of our conscious mind. And so he and his friends, they were at college in England in the 20s, they decided to try to have a shared dream experience. And they decided to meet every Friday night outside their favorite pub in their dreams. And the first time they did this, it was him and two friends. The first time they did this, him and one friend showed up and they talked and were like, this is so cool. Are we like actually awake and aware in our dream?
Right.
They were like, I think so. So the next day they meet their third friend for lunch. And they're telling him, like, we did it. We did it. We had this shared dream experience. And the third friend said, oh my gosh, I completely forgot to set that intention. And so he always wondered, is that why he didn't show up? Yeah.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now, this kind of goes back to when we were talking earlier about intuition. Is there a tie between intuition and dreams? Because on the surface level, at least it would seem as such.
Yes. Yeah. More right-brained people. So people who are naturally creative and imaginative and big picture outside of the box thinkers, those types of people are going to be more naturally intuitive. And they're also going to have dreams more easily and recall their dreams more easily than left brain math science people. It doesn't mean you can't train yourself to do it, though. Everyone can do this. It's just if you're a right brain thinker and you do tend to trust your intuition more throughout the day, that's going to show up in your dreams. I always like to tell people that whatever is going on in your day is going to show up in your dreams. So if you're super stressed out and worried and anxious, you're either not going to remember your dreams or you're going to have anxious, stressed out dreams. This is why most people tend to remember their dreams more vividly on vacation or when they're just in one of those relaxed stages of life, which, we don't always get those a lot.
I haven't had one of those in a really long time, about maybe 17 years.
Exactly.
Yours is a little bit longer.
Yes, but we really can, if we intend to remember just setting the power of our mind is so amazing. If you wake up and say, today's going to be a great day, you tend to have a great day.
Right.
If you go to bed and say, I'm going to remember my dreams, you tend to do that. Something else my research showed me that I really can't let go of is that our subconscious mind cannot handle an unanswerable question. And this is why a lot of the Buddhist and Tibetan monks will meditate on a question that is unanswerable because it calms the egoic mind down and it shuts down the subconscious mind for a while because the subconscious mind can't handle a question they don't have the answer to. It freaks out. So if you fall asleep and you either write down a question you really want the answer, should I take this job? Should we consider moving to this new house? Whatever it is that's on your mind, write it down, put it under your pillow. You might not have a dream that night. In fact, I can almost guarantee you won't. But within 2 weeks, you should have a dream that you remember and that gives you insight into what you should do about that situation.
Interesting. Now, do you have to think about it as you're going to bed every night? Think about the same question every night as you're going to bed.
Yes. Yes.
So
and try it for 2 weeks.
Is that something like, when you say about, starting your day with a good day, I'm going to have a good day kind of thing. I'm a huge advocate for morning meditations. I meditate as soon as I wake up. I don't even get out of bed. I sit up in bed, put my little AirPods in and do my meditation. And, so now how about on the flip side of that? Is it good? Because I do a meditation falling asleep. I do a lot of meditations throughout. I realize how much time I spend in some form of meditation, but typically those are sleep ones that actually are intended to help me fall asleep because I do have trouble falling asleep. Now, is there some type of more conscious effort that, because honestly, 90% of the time, if not more, I don't recall any of those meditations whatsoever. Is there something more on the conscious level we should be doing meditation wise to kind of set the tone for a good sleep, like we set the tone for a good day?
Yes, I think meditation is fabulous and I will always advocate for it, but you don't have to meditate to be a good dreamer. The key is really what you're doing 2 hours before you fall asleep. If there's any light in your room, if there's a blue light, a wireless router, if you fall asleep to the TV on, you're not going to remember your dreams. One of the best things you can do is meditate, like you said, or read something spiritual. I found I love reading about angels. So I have a ton of books on angel stories and miracles. It just makes me very happy. And when I fall asleep reading things like that, I tend to remember my dreams. Also, raising your body temperature. If you take a hot shower or bath 90 minutes before you go to bed, that has been proven in research labs to help you recall your dreams. But a lot of people are falling asleep watching TikTok or leaving the TV on, or they leave a little nightlight on. All things I totally get, and that's fine. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to fall asleep.
Right.
But if you are wanting to remember your dreams, you do need to stop that.
That's not going to help at all.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the kind of dreams I'm going to have tonight after this conversation. So, well, thank you so much. I have enjoyed every part of listening to this, and I imagine all the listeners will enjoy every part of listening to this because it's just fascinating. Before we go, what is out of your book? What would you say is your favorite? I mean, I know as someone who has written a book, I know that you put your heart and your soul into this book. What is your favorite part of the book? What was the portion of it that really kind of made you feel like this is why I'm doing this?
I loved sharing all the stories I've received and I've experienced from loved ones on the other side coming through in dreams, because I find that so validating and confirming that our souls do go on and there is something after this, and that our loved ones on the other side always want what's best for us and are always looking out for us. So my favorite story, selfishly, is a dream I had. I was very, very close to my mother-in-law, Maggie, and when she passed, I just missed her terribly, and it was really hard for me. And about, the 6 years after she passed, I had this dream where I woke up in my bed to a loud crash in my living room. And I knew I was dreaming, but I knew something important was happening. So I rushed into my living room, and there's Maggie on the floor. And I said, Maggie, what are you doing in my dream? Yeah. And she said, help me up, Samantha. That took more energy than they told me it would. And I said, what did? And she said, breaking into your dreams. She said, so I don't have much time. And she held my hands and she said, listen to me, darling, listen to me. It means nothing. Do you understand me? You're going to be okay. And tell Grace congratulations. And then I woke up.
Oh, wow.
And I woke up my husband at the time and I said, I think I just saw your mother in a dream. And so I told him the story and I was like, what means nothing? Like, what should I not worry? Everything was going pretty well in my life at that time. And I didn't know what she meant. And that kind of freaked me out. Like, uh-oh, what's coming?
Right.
So he said, well, let me call my sister, Grace's mom, and see if anything great happened to her, because maybe it was just a dream.
Right.
So he called his sister and I heard him go, wow, congratulations. And I was like, uh-oh. So Grace had just made the Junior Olympic ski team, which is a pretty big deal.
Right.
And we didn't know that at the time. So I remember he said to me, well, something's coming. And that night I found a lump in my breast and it was diagnosed as breast cancer. And it was, my kids were so little at the time, and it was absolutely terrorizing to go through that process.
Right.
But I am fine and I have been cancer-free since 2012. And I'm very grateful for that. But through that whole process, and the appointments and the waiting and the doctors and all I kept thinking about was that dream. It means nothing. You're going to be okay.
Wow.
And I don't think if I had that dream, I could have made it through that year as well as I did. So I just love stories like that because they remind us that we really are not alone.
Right. That just gives me chills as well. How do you tie, your kids went to Catholic school with mine. How do you tie spirituality and religion? Where do you see intersection? Where do you see an overlap? Where do you see, conflict? How do you fit this together?
That is such a good question. It's one I get all the time because I am the worst Catholic. The Catholic Church is against yoga. It's against Reiki.
Yeah.
It's against everything. But
I remember the day my daughter came home and told me that I was committing a sin doing yoga. Yes.
Yes. So, not the best Catholic, but the bishops, they published a letter in 2017 saying that they approved of charismatic gifts, which include communicating with the deceased. And it also approved healing hands, which to me is a lot like Reiki. So I take a lot from that. Also, I believe that wherever we are on our spiritual path, whatever serves us, whatever helps us to feel connected and whole and linked into something greater than us is always good. And as much as I have so many issues with the Catholic Church, I mean, not to mention the priest scandals or the fact that nuns can't give mass, all of that pisses me off. All I know is I feel very at home there. I feel very connected there. I feel at peace there. When I was starting to finally come out of the psychic closet in 2005, I was terrified and I didn't want to leave my faith. I was a member of the Rosary Making group. I was a member of the Mom's Morning Prayer group. I didn't want to leave all of that.
Right.
And I went to church one day and it was the bishop's annual appeal and they had a guest speaker. And I thought, oh, here he comes. He's going to ask us for money and guilt us into donating and tithing more. And the guy stood up. He was an old priest from Long Island. I've never seen him at our church before or since, which I find interesting.
Right.
And he said, do you know who the first person you're going to meet in heaven will be? And of course, we all just looked at each other like, I don't know, Jesus, Peter. And he said, your neighbor who just had an abortion. And the second person you'll meet in heaven is your cousin who's gay. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the man for me. I have to talk to him. So at the end of his beautiful homily, he said, I'm seeing people for confessions. I made a beeline. Like I got my communion and I just zipped out of there, which, you're not supposed to do.
Right.
I don't care.
You're already on the list at this point. So
first on the list. And I go to see him and, confession now is face to face, which I hate. I miss those little partitions so much.
Right.
So I'm facing him and I'm telling him how I'm studying crystals and Reiki and Tarot and chakras and all of this stuff. And he's nodding and listening. And he said, okay, my dear, so what are your sins? And I said, well, I thought I just confessed them to you.
Right.
And he said, tell me this, do you keep God at the heart of all you do? And I said, yes, of course, always. And he said, then you've committed no sin, go in peace.
Wow.
And I've just held on to that.
Yeah, that's wonderfully inspiring. That needs to come back. I'd like to.
He really does.
The priest from Long Island. Where is he?
I know, and I just think I really do wish everyone could just honor people where they are on their path. My best friend in the whole world is an evangelical Christian. She does not agree with anything I do, think, or say about all of this stuff, but she's family to me. I love her and I respect her beliefs and she respects my beliefs. We just don't debate it. Right. So I just think we need to honor wherever we are. If you're an atheist, an agnostic, whatever faith, religion you choose or not to choose to believe in, I just feel we need to respect that, and accept we're all walking each other home, as Ram Dass said, and we just need to help each other do that by honoring where we are. So I get a lot of judgment from my spiritual friends for being Catholic, and that's fine. But I wish everyone could just say, for whatever reason, that wonky church served her, let her be.
Right. Well, honestly, I feel like I get judgment as an academic for being Catholic.
Sure.
You wouldn't think necessarily that would be just as strong as that, but absolutely. And I have the same struggles that you do. I was at mass this morning for Wednesday school mass. I'm still going to Wednesday school mass.
Oh, I miss that so much. Yeah. It's always a struggle, right? And sometimes I go and I'm like, oh, I don't know about what he's saying or she's saying at this moment. Right. But all I know is it's what I was born into and I feel very at home there. I moved around a lot as a kid and I really cherish the fact that the mass never changed no matter where we were. And so that has stayed true for me. But again, my other dear friend is a pagan. I have a very good friend who's an atheist. I just think whatever you believe, just let everyone be.
Right. Yeah. And that's, that goes a little bit into my other area of research and teaching, my political communication. And, that's something that's so interesting to see. And so much of that I see with my classes and my students. And it really is I feel like we're a different generation at this point. And it is, but I know I've asked my students in the past where they would say things like, I could never date a Republican, or, I would never date a Democrat, or, and it's like to even think that, I would never be friends with, we can't possibly have any of the same values if you vote for X, that kind of thing. And it's like, so generalizing everything about that person's value system, that person's personality, generalizing everything about them based on who they vote for in an election.
It's very polarizing.
Such a polarized world that we're in. And so it's very interesting to have you say something like that, because I know, my husband and I, we agree on so little when it comes to politics or social issues, and some of it is he enjoys being devil's advocate. He loves that role. And so I always wonder, what do we think, as opposed to what are you trying to egg me along with here? But, but I know that, frankly, I know my parents are on different, they always say that their votes canceled each other out. But that is so many couples that I know our age, they are completely different, guess our kids would think of it as being different value systems, but yet they're obviously not different value systems, because they're living this life together. They're raising this family together. Their structural values are the same, and yet they can manifest as different issues or different votes or different whatever. And so to say friends with different intolerance of, I wonder how much of that is a generational thing that's changing.
It could be. It really could be. One of my favorite phrases to say is, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know. If someone tells me they voted for this person because of A, B, and C, I'll say, well, I don't know. Maybe you're right. But I'm not going to, what's that famous quote? You don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to.
Right.
So I just don't engage in those. I'm fascinated. At the end of the day, I'm just fascinated by people. Absolutely fascinated. One of my good friend's kids has just announced that he is a devout socialist. And she is like freaking out about it. And I was
devout. I like that word.
I'm really, really into it. And I was just so interested. And I said to him, well, I think that's fascinating. Good for you. I don't know a lot about it, but I would love to know what country has chosen socialism that is thriving, because I couldn't think of one. He came back with, I think, Finland, and gave me all these facts that I didn't
Denmark,
know.
I think, yes.
Yeah. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. I learned so much. And I think he learned a lot too by hearing my views on, capitalism. And, I think we need motivating factors to have these intentions, like a COVID vaccine. So by me saying to him, I'm just so curious, I don't know a lot about it, what countries are doing well with socialism, it gave him some confidence to share his beautiful knowledge. It educated me, but then I was able to share with him why I'm such a fan of democracy, and he was able to listen. So I think if we just approach these conversations with, I don't know. This is what I'm thinking right now. I don't know. Let's just have a conversation about it. I think that helps people to have those conversations. I also think that young people are losing so much of their identity, right? We don't really know who we are or what we're supposed to be. We have so many options right now. I think it overwhelms our young kids. Yeah. I remember we had a Russian exchange student come to our high school, and the first time he went to our mall, he fell to his knees and cried because he'd never seen so many choices of clothing. And I kind of think that's how our young kids are feeling now, with all these choices about career and faiths and sexuality, religion and not religion. They don't know. They're overwhelmed.
Right.
And so I think they're just picking one and holding on to it for dear life, because at the end of the day, they don't know either. And so I think
that's an interesting thing you've touched on, because I mean, realistically, how you just said about engaging with your friend's son and asking him questions, and that you both left the conversation feeling good. And I think that that's something that if we could do with our own children as parents. But, there's such a, we know the right answer kind of thing. And this is and there's so much ego involvement with our views and feeling close to these that we don't ever say, that's interesting. Can you tell me about it? Why do you feel that way? And it's just, maybe if it's your own child, it's different and it's harder to detach. If your child was a devout social, all of a sudden, maybe you wouldn't have the same kind of, response that you do when it's your friend's child. But it's the same thing that, how do you tell me about it? Because you're showing them that you respect that they have a position, that they have a preference, that they have knowledge, instead of telling them, no, you're wrong, this is the way to do it type of thing. Now, do you see that as a parenting strategy?
I do.
Well as just a rule for an overall rule for interaction?
I do. I think we have to admire and respect our children for the wise people that they are. And I think we have to respect that we've raised them, especially if you're the parent of teens. You've done the work. You've put the work in, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point, we have to sit back and trust that those roots are there. Now you got to give them their wings and let them fly. And sometimes that means watching them fall like Icarus too, right? But you got to let them do it. I have one child who refused to get confirmed, is not Catholic, and I completely respect and honor that. I have no problem with that. She has to find her way. Just because that works for me, why should I be so arrogant to assume that's going to work for my children? Like I said, at the end of the day, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know why I like that church. I don't know why she doesn't like that church. We can talk about it, but I think when anyone who forces someone into a chosen path or belief or opinion, that always backfires.
Right. And so that concept of, I just don't know that. And so many people have just a hard time admitting that they don't know the answer to something.
Yeah.
I've tried to come back
thoughts and beliefs
that's
and
a great
opinions.
question. I don't have the answer to that. I would love to have the answer, but I don't know everything.
Yeah. And I think we all need to be comfortable admitting that. We know what we've been taught. We know what we believe. We know what we think. But at the end of the day, we don't know. We don't know. And we need to leave all those options and doors open, especially for our teens as they're learning to navigate and form their own opinions. And I think part of that navigating is navigating away from us. That's healthy. That's normal. They need to have differing opinions that might shock us at times, but that's how they're figuring out who they are without our apron strings. And so we've got to cut those. We've got to give them those wings and let them go, having confidence that we did everything we could. We put all the roots in and all the work in, and it'll come to you. When I was teaching English at the community college, I had this Saturday morning class of all single moms. They were so amazing. And I was pregnant with my daughter, Olivia, and they gave me a baby shower. It's one of my happiest teaching memories. Oh. And one of them came up to me and said, listen to me. When that daughter in your belly, when she turns 13, you be prepared to say goodbye to her, but welcome her back when she's 18.
Aww.
I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, the teen years, they're gonna go away from you. But you know what? She was right. They pull back, but they come right back.
Yeah.
They really, really do. If you give them that freedom and flexibility in those years.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of letting them go in those years. It's just giving them some freedom and some independence.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Samantha. I mean, I have enjoyed this immensely.
I have too. It's so good to get a chance to talk to you.
So now you all can go take a selfish and check out Samantha's book, The Awake Dreamer, Lucid Dreaming, Astral Travel, and Mastering the Dreamscape, and listen to both of her podcasts, Psychic Teachers and Enlightened Empaths. Thank you so much for listening. I know you could have spent the last hour with anyone, and I'm so grateful that you chose me. I hope that you quiet the noise of your mind and truly ask yourself, I want, I need, I am ready for, and learn to both hear and listen to your intuition. And if these are some of those unanswerable questions for you, do like Samantha suggested. Write them down, put them under your pillow for a couple of weeks, and the answers will come to you in your dreams. Don't forget to share the show with your friends. Reach out on socials. Follow me on Facebook at Reframing Me. Join the Facebook group, Reframing Me, a podcast community. on Instagram and TikTok at Reframing Me. Email me with questions or issues you'd like me to discuss in a later episode, jen@reframing-me.com. Until next time, be well, communicate, and listen to your intuition.